Now, leading our bulletin this hour, today is the last day for South Africans to register for the 2024 National and Provincial Elections. The cutoff follows the President's announcement earlier this week that the election will be held on the 29th of May. Now, eligible voters can register at the IEC offices in their municipality or online. The IEC has held 2 voter registration weekends and 27.6 million voters are registered thus far. Once registrations close at the end of today, the election date will be proclaimed as well as gazetted. Now, founder and CEO of Groundwork Collective, Mbali Ntuli, joins us live to continue this discussion. Good afternoon, Mbali, and thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. So it's finally happened. The president has issued a proclamation. So the task now is for political parties, civil society and election bodies to encourage people to now actually show up and vote. Your take on the road ahead?
I think this is going to be one of the most hotly contested elections in our country's history. Obviously, 30 years since democracy, it's a very significant and symbolic time for any democracy. But also importantly, we've had the registration of 350 parties. We'll also find out soon from the IEC whether all of those parties have fulfilled the requirements and criteria for them to be able to appear on the ballot. So they may be registered as parties, but they may not be able to be on the ballot as per the electoral amendment as last year. So even that is an exciting new dynamic to our political system. We haven't had this before. It's the first time that we've had the idea of parties that are registered but might not be on the ballot. And I think that it's going to be hotly contested because we have a lot of very influential people that are leading some of these parties who clearly are wanting to go out and get that vote. And so for civil society and just ordinary citizens, I think it's going to be fun to watch from the outskirts. But the big challenge does remain, despite the fact that we have a record number of people that have registered, will they actually go out? Because we have seen declining participation in the last few years. But I do get the sense, and certainly from the work that we've been doing as Groundwork Collective with young people, that this is a watershed election where people are determined to go and have their vote.
I wanted us to speak a bit further on what GWC is doing on the ground and your call for observers to actually sign up. But before that, I want to take you to just your opening statement around the proliferation of political parties. This has been the subject of much debate. Some saying that it's indication that many people want to help because indeed we're in trouble as South Africa, while others say it just shows that political leaders are not willing to work with each other because much of what they all offer is similar. They should be coming together and making sure that there's a strong opposition. Your views on just that conversation?
I think it's a sign of maturing democracy to be able to have people that believe that they can lead, be able to put up their hands and to find, some semblance of support from communities. I think it's dangerous to say that just because people have some similar ideas, they should automatically be put together, because I think then what you have is a broad church, which then can also create stagnation in that party and the inability for that party to actually do some of their things. I personally would rather have some niche parties. I love the idea that we now are also going to have independents being able to contest. And you're going to have parties that can speak directly to a very diverse grouping of South Africans. So I think it's great for our democracy to have more people that are going to be able to contest and to be able to say that they would like to put their hands up as potential leaders. Of course, the test is whether or not they actually have been able to resource mobilize within the time that they've had, trusted enough supporters on the ground, and will actually get the votes. But that's what democracy is. And I think it's much better for us to have more than rather less. But I do think that it does show that there's also a sense of opportunism in our political system by people that think that based on their own popularity, their own strength of personality, they can go and start a political party and people will just automatically vote for them. Now, with this threshold of signatures, that's really going to be put to the test, because before anyone could just, register a party and could potentially be voted in. I think that some of the parties that we have currently in Parliament, if this threshold of signatures had been a requirement before, they wouldn't have made it to Parliament. But so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
And then to your work as GWC as observers and your call for others to sign up to also be observers. Talk to us about this.
So as GWC, we've obviously had a very long campaign over the last 2 years. We've been registering as many young people as we could, and then also been giving them current curriculum based on civic education so that they actually know what the government is, how the state works, so that we're not asking them to vote, but we have them to explain what is the difference between an MP and an MPL, what are their roles, how does that affect your life. Now we are saying, aside from just voting on voting day, we would love patriotic South Africans to join us as independent observers, to sign up with us, and to spend a few hours of their time actually actively protecting their democracy. Everyone's going to go to a voting station in any case. We have the accreditation from the IEC, and we're asking for South Africans who are keen on giving back to their country to protect their democracy, help us to make sure that we help the IEC to have free and fair elections everywhere, and particularly in places where we have identified are red hot zones where wards are on the margin or where political parties are fiercely contesting one another.
When broadly looking, though, do you get a sense that young people are now willing to participate or express themselves in this form by actually heading to the polls and vote? Because we're seeing they're quite expressive, perhaps on social media, on a number of political issues. But do you get a sense that this time they're willing to withstand the heat, whatever weather, and just be in those lines to cast their vote?
I think so. We have quite a lot of faith in the young people that we've come across. We've been doing some focus groups as we've been going along and registering young people. And there does seem to be a sense of just this is it for them to try and affect some sort of change. I think it's also really great that we're seeing celebrities for the first time really also encouraging people to come out and register to vote. Obviously, in our campaigns, we've used some influential people, Nandi Madidas, the Motion Dikis, but you're also seeing celebrities like Bonang, who has been very consistent. I think she's been one of the most consistent celebrities telling young people to go out and register to vote. So I think that that's also been helpful to making it something that's cool, something that people want to do. And so I think young people know that what's at stake for them is definitely the kind of policies that are going to affect them much longer than anyone else. And quite frankly, if the 12 million young people who weren't registered came together and actually went out to vote, we could make a real difference. And even the ones that have registered, because they've also been the highest number of people that have registered in the last 2 registration weekends, they significantly can move as a group to voting for people that share their interests. And that's what we want to see in a democracy that's continuously evolving.
And then of the manifestos that have been launched thus far, do you get a sense that most of them are focusing on the critical issues and actually giving us solutions? Because if anything, most of them have repeated the issues. They've repeated that we have an issue with load shedding, we have an issue with our infrastructure insofar as logistics is concerned, so we need to deal with state-owned entities. But very few are tackling or addressing how they will go about fixing those very issues. Do you get a sense that of just those manifestos that have been launched, they're really presenting some sort of an option for young people?
Well, without seeming partisan to any of the political parties, I have been impressed with some of the solutions that have been offered, I think, by some of the newer entrants into the political realm. I think that they've had some very interesting proposals that they've put on place. Things like the single mothers tax that I've seen from Rise and Zansi have seemed really interesting. The So Change Starts Now has an interesting 500 billion tax plan that they want to put on, a new Marshall Plan for South Africa, which, whilst I agree with the merits of the Marshall Plan being needed, I'm not sure that we have the kind of tax base that can actually absorb any more taxes being taken from the 5.2 million taxpayers. But they seem to have structured theirs looking at corporates and looking at very high net worth individuals. So there have been some interesting solutions that have been coming from different political parties. Whether or not they'll be the kind of solutions that South Africans really delve into or can understand is a separate matter. But I think that it's great, again, to have the framing of issues even in a different way from some of the new entrants. And I think that that's going to be what's interesting. Obviously, we've seen a lot of parties giving us a lot of we'll make 700 million jobs, which is just unrealistic. But this is what we need to do as South Africans. We need to get invested in looking into the manifestos and really, scrutinizing what these political parties are saying. And we're looking forward to seeing the debates between the political party leaders, because that will give us a chance to also really see people like yourselves being able to really nitpick into some of the things that they put in their manifestos and whether or not some of them are even feasible.
But Mbali, do you get a sense that most citizens actually have the time or luxury of that time to go through these manifestos? Because I know even with the EFF, their document was in excess of 200 pages. We've been going through it as journalists because we have to appraise ourselves and know exactly what are some of the commitments that they have. But ordinary citizens, do you get a sense that they'll actually go through some of these?
I don't think that we've had a culture for a very long time in our country of citizens knowing that they should go through the manifestos to see what policy positions people are actually offering. What we have done a lot in the past is had a lot of cult of personality being the way that people usually vote, or people voting on single issues. And I think political parties know that. I think political parties know that very few people are going to go and scrutinize every aspect of the manifesto. And so that's why they try to sort of stick to 3 or 4 messages that they can repeat in volume over time and hope that those are the ones that stick. And with particular parties, I mean, you know what they are. So for the EFF, for example, it will be economic freedom in a lifetime, expropriation without land, sort of their main key points, and they hope that that will be enough to at least entice people. Yeah, to at least entice people into doing what they want. The DA will be clean governance, vote DA to rescue SA sort of rhetoric, which is why I say for me, what's really going to be interesting is how the new political parties are going to be taken into consideration by voters, because I find that even though they're framing the same issues, I think that they've framed them slightly differently. And for me, they seem to be the most exciting on display at the moment.